2, 3, 4.
The local yokai are a really cool group of yokai. In 2, they're only available by using special coins called Traveller's Coins in the Crankakai. Each of them had a unique coin and fusion item. The base forms are D rank and evolved to be B rank, so all of them can fit into a team without taking up a rank slot. But how good are they? That's what we'll be discussing in today's video, where we take a brief trip through all 18 local yokai and their competitive usage in Yokai Watch 3. One thing before we start, we'll be discussing the pre-votes as if they haven't been raised higher with Prestigious Treasure, as that makes some of them like Dank Sand and Takoya King become strictly better than their evolution, and I don't like that. With that said, let's get into our first yokai. Slumber Hog is a super versatile yokai. He has great HP and strength, but pretty bad everything else. His skill is like that of Lionheart, where he can only attack every other turn. He's pretty much Diet Lionheart, as he has great strength in 2 slots. He's D rank, so can fit on most defensive braid teams, and both of the main builds Slumber Hog uses are super nice and helpful for this. First, a build similar to Lionheart, where he's used as a suicide lead with 2 Crummy Mummy souls. His strength is really high, surpassing yokai like Zero. This isn't as high as Lionheart's, but since Lionheart is an A rank yokai, it's much easier to fit Slumber Hog on teams. The other build he uses is a tank build with the golden combo. Shielding Soul ignores his skill, and having him no turn most of the time will just keep him guarding longer, so you don't have to play around his awful 6 turn wait timer as much. Slumber Hog is very common on Brave Hyper offense alongside other yokai we'll talk about in a bit, as well as revenge teams alongside Lionheart, Crumyomi and the like. You wouldn't expect the Sleeping Pig to be so good competitively, but what happens when you wake the bacon? Well, you get Snortle Hog. In his rage, he loses an item slot. His strength is almost identical to Slumber Hog's, but he has better bulk. His skill is now extreme critical. Snortle Hog isn't very common, but is a much more offensive yokai than Slumber Hog. He's usually used with Whisper support and an Egg Soul for more consistent and explosive crits. You could also potentially run him with Shielding Soul as well, since his HP is great and his defense is decent. Since his strength is so good, he'd be used similarly to Signaton, who's built as an offensive yokai but also holds a Shielding Soul, since they're already so bulky and it really won't do them any harm. You might like Grumples or Return as support as well, since he's so slow. This yokai is a prime example of yokai playing totally different when they evolve. Slumber Hog is either a dedicated tank or a grudge killer, while Snortle Hog is a bulky offensive yokai that is mainly good for crit teams. It isn't fair to compare the two because of this, but Slumber Hog is more widely used. There are actually 2 local yokai in Brave. Samriel is my favourite Brave yokai. He's so funny looking, I can't put my finger on it. I wouldn't want to either, he's probably quite slimy. There are actually eels living in the river where I'm living next to. I don't really see them too much, but I saw a swan grab one out of the river once, it was kind of funny. Anyway, Samriel's stats are underwhelming to say the least. His strength is fine, his defense is good, his HP is fine, nothing too impressive. His skill is alright, there's nothing too useful but can come in handy sometimes. Where he really shines is his moveset, more specifically his support moves. His ultimate is a great strength buff to your whole field. On top of this, his Inspired is an all-up, which is always an amazing tool to have in a support yokai. Samriel's ultimate charge is super fast considering he's D rank, so you can get it off a couple times per game. I usually use him with a Brave Originian and Imaginian skill in the back. He has 2 common builds, a Charge Soul build to spam strength boosts, and a Shielding Soul build, so he can potentially take some hits while supporting your team with all-ups. He's mostly run on hyper offense Brave teams, commonly alongside Slumber Hog, to fill out a Brave unity while being a great support yokai. The discovery of Samriel ran out Don-chan out of business for me. The side of build is pretty great as well, but I prefer Samriel for his braveness. Timekiller is pretty similar, but also different. He fills a totally different role, but stat-wise he's actually pretty similar. He has 20 to 30 extra points in HP, strength and defense. He keeps the same skill, which could be even better since Timekiller is a lot more bulky than Samriel. He keeps the all-up in spirit, but trades Samriel's great strength buff for a basic X-Pattern Slashing ultimate. A pretty unfortunate change, but Timekiller is still not great, but usable. His strength isn't as good as Snortle Hog's, but he is a better user of Shielding Soul thanks to his skill and better defense. You don't really want to use him alongside yokai like Beetol, and you make sure you don't give him any serious lives. You want him to loaf, recover HP, then move to activate Shielding Soul again. The healing isn't great, but it is something to keep him going. His physical attack is also much better than Samriel's. This is a similar situation to the previous pigs, as they are also totally different. Samriel is a hyper offense support yokai, while Timekiller is a slow bulky physical attacker. Samriel sees much more use since his support is so universally good, but Timekiller isn't uncommonly used as a decent low rank attacker. Contrary to the 2 Brave locals, the 2 Tough locals are really similar to their evolutions, as well as the rest of them in general. I won't talk about Sumodan since Yokozuna is pretty much the exact same but better. Sumodan has a faster charging ultimate, but it's not too important for him. The upgrade to Yoko doesn't take up a rank slot, and there are some small bit extra qualities that Yoko has over Sumodan that makes them arguably better. First, Yokozuna has a much better strength than Sumodan, which doesn't do much until you use its ultimate. Sumodan happens to have that dreaded quality of its ultimate with 1 extra power than their evolution at max level, but this isn't as egregious as the Demi situation, since Yokozudan's strength will make his one still do much more. They're pretty interchangeable since the fastest ultimate charge is nice, but I prefer Yokozudan if I'm not using Prestige Treasure, which we won't be talking about today. Did you know that a B rank Sumodan is way better than Yokozudan? They aren't too common as they're a pretty basic tank with not much going for them. They do have the stand, but a pretty useless moveset. The healing is non-existent, the defense boost isn't very good, and Pam Strike is not a very strong attack. This ultimate is good, sure, but it's not worth using Yoko for. If you want a good low rank tough tank, use Puppy-nyan. Good offensive stats and speed, and can revive himself after death. And obviously, Swelton exists. Swelton has great defense, a super handy support skill, and 2 slots meaning you can hold the golden combo. Despite what I've said about them, you should never really use Sumodan or Yokozudan over Swelton and Puppy-nyan. I was never really a fan of Sumodan's design, but Yokozudan has really grown on me. The light blue bow looks really well, and he looks so cool. I wonder what the other Tokotogos are. It's these two. The most depressing yokai around. I always preach about how nearly every yokai is viable, and I do mean that, but the word nearly is very important. Whatever and what option are truly bad yokai. They have a really cool skill that gives their physical attacks fire attribute. So what are their physical attacks? Oh, they have some of the lowest base power in the game. They must have a strength stat that's somewhat usable, right? No, that's just a sad yokai if I've ever seen one. 35 strength, a super weak attack, and you have yourself a waste of a skill. This sucks because their other stats aren't actually terrible. Good spirit, HP and defense all make them seem like pretty usable offensive tanks. However, their end spirit raises strength for whatever reason, and no option's technique is only blaze. I said their spirit was good, but not good enough to make use of a dumb cap boost for this. If you really want to use what option, just use shielding soul and whatever else you can think of. I'm lost. There's really no redeeming qualities here, they're just plain bad. This is the first, and one of the only times I'll be saying this, but you should not use either of these yokai in 3. Well, if you're playing 2, that's a whole different ballgame that I'm not ready to tackle just yet, but they are good. Know that they're great in 2 since they pair well with Mist Tank and they have fast ultimate charge and tough unity. Well, that was a bit of a mess. Who are the next crowd? Where are the next crowd? They should be here by now, but oh. Secrecy is the Panjas. I already covered these 2 awesome yokai in a previous video, but as a brief overview, they're great ultimate spammers since they don't need to use Stealth Soul and focus on Charge Soul instead. They're also good as standalone or low rank attackers. I don't see any point discussing them further here, go watch the other video if you're curious. I know I'm going to make at least one individual happy with this one, you know who you are. Happy Kane and Starry Kane are actually not as bad as I imagined. Their spirit and speed are quite good, and their skill is nice as well. By the way, did you know that this skill has like 7 different names depending on the yokai? Caring, Prayer, Lord of Light, House Sweet, and some others I missed, because I couldn't remember. It's strange. Anyway, this skill usually pairs well with the Soul Gem with the same effect. I use Mama Aura Souls since it's cheap and has the highest level of effectiveness. So these yokai seem pretty good, right? They do until you see the movesets. This ultimate is weak, the heal is only heal or restore depending on which one you're using, and the passive healing in spirit is totally irrelevant. But you know what? I don't care. I love these yokai so damn much, especially Starry Kane. I don't use healers very often, but the next time I get a chance I'm going to use Starry Kane. You might even see her again later in the video. These next 2 yokai are also pretty ass, but are not as bad as the mountains. Grupus and Grupus can get worse the more you look at them. They're super similar, but both pretty bad. They both have above average strength and decent defense, speed and HP, with mediocre spirit. 3 of Grupus' non-HP stats are over 100, which is pretty good. However, their movesets are horrific. Ignoring techniques because their spirit is unusable, they have identical in spirits and ultimates, so it both cause confusion. This can be helpful, but is generally a pretty useless effect in Yokai Watch. As for their attacks, Grupus actually has more base power, but Grupus has a higher crit ratio. It's hard to decide, but I prefer Grupus because he has better strength. As for the skill, it boosts their strength when hit. Their strength is already solid, and so is their defense, so they could probably take a couple of hits to boost it up further. I'd recommend using a Shielding Soul on Grupus, a Shielding Soul on Grupus if you want to use the skill, or an Ache Soul if you want to make use of the extra crit ratio from Bowshot. Generally though, these 2 are not very good or useful, and there are better low rank attackers than Shady. They're not unusable like I thought they'd be, but they are pretty bad. I didn't really care for Grumpus's design until I saw this animation. I don't know why his hat floats, but it's funny. I love Grupus's design though. He's the spitting image of an arrogant leader that nobody really likes. I love that they actually named his army the Willy Grumpers. This is what good idols look like. Danksand and No Sankyu are so similar that I won't even really acknowledge Danksand, because No Sankyu is just a straight upgrade at the original ranks. He has around 308 HP and 166 defense, so as a low rank tank, his defensive stats are actually really good. He also has a decent spirit, so he can make use of his high powered back rows ultimate. He is Eerie, and yokai in Eerie that don't focus on Inspirit or Drain are pretty unique. His skill is really situational, as Earth has a very oncoming attacking element, but it does occasionally come up. As a tanky Eerie, he is far and away worse than Sprank, but he can also work if you want to not take up rank slot. He is obviously used with a shielding zone. No Sankyu is an incredibly rare tank to see people actually use, as most everyone will go out of their way to use Sprank instead, but No Sankyu is a totally usable tank. I also adore him. His design, his stats, even his name, definitely up there as one of my favourite Eerie yokai. Takoya Kid and Takoya King seem similar at first, but there are qualities that make both somewhat usable. These yokai both have a skill that lets them hit the yokai that just hit them. It doesn't give them an extra turn, it's just a straight damaging hit. They both have the same strength, but Takoya King gets more defense and HP. Takoya Kid is a much more offensive yokai though, since he uses Charge Soul and does ultimate spam, since it charges really fast. You aren't losing any strength by keeping him as Takoya Kid, and even if you do use Precious Treasure, which I knew I wouldn't, I said I wouldn't talk about, but like, it's kind of important. If you use Precious Treasure, his strength should even surpass Takoya King's. Takoya King though is even more useful as a bulky physical attacker holding a shielding soul, but he's almost never seen since there are yokai that do the job much better. I was never too into the designs at first, but Takoya King especially has really grown on me. The idol makes him look super pissed, and it probably is because Takoya Kid is used and he isn't. So that was all the local yokai. Really the only ones you'll see around in the meta are the Hogs, Samariel, Takoya Kid, and maybe, just maybe, some guy thought No Sankyu needed to be in his Nocturne team. So now we're going to try and make a team using only local yokai. At the same time this video uploads, there should be an unscripted video with a team of just 6 local yokai. So watch that after this. And if you're coming from that video, thanks for watching. Have a good day.